Welcome to episode 1 of King Paramecium's Horrorween 2017 vlog. For this first episode, I want to go back to the very beginnings of horror. You know what? I've made too many cuts already. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm going to go back to the beginnings of horror and Halloween for myself. It's hard to say what came first, my love for Halloween or my love for horror, or perhaps they're both inextricable from one another. You know, Halloween's the only holiday that can bind you to a genre of entertainment, whereas, sure, everyone has their favorite Christmas movies that roll around, but they're too awkward to watch year-round. Whereas horror movies, you can watch anytime. So maybe as I recount my earliest memories of Halloween and horror, you might want to join me in the comment section below and share your first memories. My earliest memory of trick-or-treating or dressing up for Halloween was probably age 4, if not age 3. I remember I was the Wolfman. Now the Halloween after that, I was Count Dracula. So my original exposure to Universal monsters occurred sometime around the beginning of my cognizant memory. I know that my father before me was a huge fan of the Universal monsters, and like me, he loved figurines, loved stories, and even writing stories about monsters, and I honestly don't remember, but I can only assume that he's the one that introduced me to the world of horror fiction. My first Wolfman costume was all homemade. Nothing was store-bought. I remember my mother painting my face and converting a brown onesie pajama into a hairy Wolfman suit complete with tail. But as far as Halloween itself, all I remember is there was a certain time of year where everything in the stores became more sensational. I remember the grocery store putting up big cardboard signs of ghosts and pumpkins, and even though I was too young to realize that an entire season was ushering in the celebration of what could honestly be called, dark and occult mythologies, such as the undead, I remember there was this joy that it brought about that was no different than the joy of seeing Santa and Christmas presents. For instance, we had a Snickers Halloween ghost candy jar that I guess either came from the store or we got for mailing away UPCs for Snickers bars, but whenever my mom put that Snickers Halloween plastic ghost thing out on the counter, I knew a special time of year was beginning. Also, even though I was too young to sensationalize about the weather changing, there had to have been something undeniably pleasurable about the air getting cooler and the leaves bronzing and crunching under your feet after a long hot summer. If you'll excuse me, I'm enjoying some hot apple cider as I reminisce. So my earliest memories of Halloween are clear. I believe, even though it's not considered horror, the first movie I ever remember seeing on VHS on a television at home was the original Ghostbusters. And even though that's more considered a comedy, as a kid, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I always remember my mom made me cover my eyes at the beginning of the film every time the library ghost presented herself. I was allowed to watch the rest of the film. I even had slews of toys as early as age 3 and 4 about Ghostbusters, as well as the relatively harmless Ghostbusters Saturday morning cartoon. But I never got to see the librarian ghost's face, and it always made me wonder, why shouldn't I see it? Admittedly, after about a year and a half, I watched it with my grandmother and neglected to tell her that I was supposed to cover my eyes at that scene. And there it was, the library ghost. Her eyes were hollow, her face meaty, her teeth rotten. What was it about her that I wasn't allowed to see compared to the various other ghosts, such as the skeleton taxi driver near the end? Beyond that, my other memories of early horror were relegated to cartoons. I remember the Charlie Brown Halloween special, as everyone else does. I also recall there being a Saturday morning cartoon called Duckula Much like DuckTales, everyone in the cartoon was an anthropomorphic waterfowl. And the intro was particularly campy and just had this cool 70s horror vibe. But there was something so dark and appealing about it. You know, the intro animation had thunder flashing and showed his ancestor be staked through the heart by an early bird version of, Van Helsing. But I guess that was my first big appeal to Dracula. And as I mentioned before, I was Dracula for Halloween at 5. And I can only guess that that is what tied me to my earliest brush with horror gaming, which is Castlevania. That's a whole nother video for itself, but there was something that just compelled me to have to play these Castlevania games, and it was all tied to Dracula. Early on, I knew that there was something special about Halloween that both children and adults enjoyed. My whole family seemed to celebrate Halloween with just as much relish as we did Christmas. While trick-or-treating was truly awesome, and I loved coming home with a huge bag of candy, it was the lead-up to trick-or-treating that was the most special to me. Just the phantasmagoric deluge of sights and sounds and decorations and music and things on TV and things in the store, walking around the whole neighborhood, seeing everyone else's houses decorated. There was just this sense of community that taught me at an early age that Halloween, and to a lesser extent, horror, was just this elemental part of, human experience. And that being said, when trick-or-treating was over, Halloween didn't really end to me. It's not like today where on Halloween night they're already rolling out the Christmas decorations. And that's why, even though this vlog is starting pretty late into the Halloween season, I'm going to go on talking about it through November. Because if they're allowed to put the Christmas shit up in, September and October and tell us it's time to buy Christmas shit, then we should be allowed to keep the Halloween stuff up as long as we please and continue to celebrate this special and magical time of year and all of the traditions and sights and sounds that go with it. So please, in the comment section below, share with me some of your earliest Halloween memories, horror memories, and family traditions and stuff. I'm interested to see if everybody else enjoyed such a magical introduction in life to these things as I did, because they definitely colored who I was for years to come. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode of King Paramecium's Halloween 2017 vlog.